Allison Brenner, you have spent your life working with humans, understanding humans, and now you're devoting everything you have to self awareness. Why is self awareness so important in today's age? And why is it important that we learn more about it for ourselves?
Mhm. That's such a great question. Thank you. And thanks for having me here.
Thank
I
you.
think that, now more than ever, people, as just as a result of the last series of years and COVID and everything, people are more isolated, they're more disconnected, and they are not always, research shows us, they're not always great at identifying how they show up in the world. So there's confusion over like why they don't have the relationship that they want, or they don't get the promotion they want, or they're not getting called back for, the next interview or for the job. And I think that there is a lot of um, times where people are in their own way and they don't quite know it and they don't know what it is
Mm,
about it. But if they just knew, they would be happy to make the small changes or tweaks or build some skills in order to impact the way they intend to. And I
mm.
just think that if there was a way for people to get some more information, they could show up the way they want to and have a better opportunity to create the outcomes that they're looking for their own lives.
Why do you think people don't understand enough about themselves? What's standing in the way?
Yeah, I think, we all have the stories that we've grown up with and the trials and tribulations that we've experienced that give us the biases that we hold, that slant us in the subjective view that we're coming from. And I think there's a lot of reasons. I think that's probably a deep dive into psychology, into why we don't see ourselves as objectively, why we don't see ourselves the way other people do. I think sometimes it's wanting to come off a certain way, and maybe for many, even trying so hard to be that way and not realizing what it is that gets in the way of genuine communication or genuine impact.
Yeah. And it starts from a young age. We start to really try to morph ourselves and play around with how we can kind of change who we show up as in the world. And I think it can really morph also the way that we think about ourselves, and we can lose track of that. You started your career as in therapy, in psychotherapy, before you got into everything you're doing today. I'm curious what you learned during that time that kind of set you down this road of exploring self-awareness and exploring
Mm.
kind of metacognition and what we think about ourselves. What did you find in your time as a young psychotherapist that got you curious about self-awareness?
Well, I would say my curiosity started even younger than that. I remember, even like you talked about, this starts in childhood, and in childhood, I wanted to know, why do people do what they do? Why do they make the choices they make? What causes somebody to show up how they show up? And so that led me on the path of psychology, and I thought, oh, I want to go be a clinical psychologist and really spend my time in that sphere. And so I took that path, college and grad school, and started working as a psychotherapist. And what I found was, while I do love the study of psychology and the study of behavior, it wasn't necessarily in mental health specifically. Um, but what did I learn? Goodness. I learned a lot about how people's background, how their childhood experiences lead them down a path of their beliefs, and that if you're complacent, you just coast in those beliefs, and that it takes determination and commitment to challenge those beliefs and see what else might be true.
Hmm. What about that learning led you to take the next step away from therapy?
Mm. Um, well, I think that so there's probably a gap between those two. So I think the thing that led me away from therapy, I was working in a psychiatric hospital, and I would often do intake and meet with people to determine if they needed to be admitted inpatient into this psych hospital. And it wasn't my admission, but there was a admission that on the child unit, the child and adolescent unit, where that individual took their own life. And what struck me was I didn't want to look at people and say, we're going to take care of your loved one. And I couldn't control what would happen once they were on the unit. And that was very impactful to me. And it really made me wake up and say, okay, what is it that I love about this? And what do I want to be doing? And the short story is I pivoted to industrial organizational psychology. And I thought, okay, I'm still looking at behavior, measuring behavior, helping people with behavior. But in an organizational setting, I'm helping more people on sort of a mass scale, more at a time. And that I'm helping them with peak performance. I'm helping them get to how they want to show up because they want the raise or the promotion, or they want to have better communication skills, or better, a whole variety of skills that help them be the most effective version of themselves. And at that time was in the workplace. So that was how I made that shift. And then shortly after, because of my background in psychotherapy, I had IO consulting clients asking me if I could provide coaching to
Mm,
some of their um, uh, staff, usually upper level staff, that had really strong technical skills, but lacked some of the, I'll put the umbrella, emotional intelligence that was
yeah.
needed to be successful in the workplace. And so that's how that pivot happened. And I thought, wow, gosh, if I'm going to do that, I better go to coaching school and really make sure I know what coaching is and where's the line between psychotherapy and coaching and how I want to show up to best serve these people. And I'll say that over the span of my role, whether it was psychotherapy or consulting or coaching, time and again, what I would find is it was often that missing piece in the self-awareness realm that led to people getting stuck. And when we could open that up and expand perspective, led to their happiness or fulfillment or achievement of whatever it was that they was meaningful to them.
Interesting. So when you've worked with, this is you saying that working with clients one-on-one from psychotherapy to then coaching leaders in organizations as an IO consultant and a coach, you realize that these people have a very similar pattern that seems to be holding them back from the thing that they want. And that at the root of this is often a lack of self-awareness. Am I right in saying that?
I think that that's a like a really condensed version of it. But yes, if you had to put it simply, I would say,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, the theme that I would say I saw show up the most was a surprise by many people that their view of what happened in a room was not everybody's view.
Ooh.
That was so
Explain a
big to
little bit.
me. Like I could be speaking to a really senior leader, international senior leader, who was struggling with, let's say, some interpersonal issues in the workplace, uh, and getting into a discussion around something that happened in a room that caused conflict between this individual and other people. And when we did the deep dive and we're sort of debriefing where that leader was coming from and what their experience was and what they believe happened, it was like a news flash to that person that not everybody walked away with the same impact. That some people
Mm,
felt the leader's behavior differently than how the leader thought was certain this is what happened. And when we were able to break apart different viewpoints and different perspectives, that individual was able to see, oh my gosh, like there was no awareness that her intent wasn't the experience everybody there experienced. And I have found over 18 years of coaching that that's not unusual. Like people will have a wow over not realizing that their viewpoint or their intention or their experience, subjective experience, is not held by every single other person in that same space.
Huh. So what I hear you saying is that most of us, if we haven't, I guess, had the realization yet or had someone bring it to our attention, most of us think that if we experience the same external reality, we will have experienced it in the same way. We will have the same memory of that event. But that's not actually how that works. And it takes awareness of this fact through what? Through you pointing it out, through other people pointing out that they had maybe some experiences that differed, for them to realize that okay, we actually experience this reality that is objectively the same on a different subjective level. Am I right? Is that what you're going for there?
So what I'd say, what is it when to the question of what does it take? I would say it takes curiosity.
Hmm.
And so a lot, for many people, it doesn't occur to them to be curious. What is somebody else's experience? How did that land with
Hmm.
them? What did they feel? Or even to be curious, I'll tell you another thing that I have found to be really impactful with my coaching clients is the idea that if they think before going into a meeting, that if they think about what is the takeaway I want somebody to have after the meeting? What do I want them to feel? What is the impact I want to have on that person? What do I want them to think about me when they leave interacting with me? That really changes the quality of the meeting. It goes
Hmm.
from here's what I want out of it to here's how I want them to feel about me. I still might be trying to get a sale or close a deal or whatever might be going on. But when you consider the other person is a person too, and they're going to feel an impact from you. What is that impact you want them to feel? Um, I've seen it change so much for so many people. And so it's like even intrapersonally getting curious. What is the impact I want to have there? And then getting curious, which is like the act of seeking feedback of inquiring with the people who experience us. What is your experience like? Because I
Hmm.
can't know. I can think I know how I came off, but what I might think of as uh, you know, gosh, being direct, and a strong communication skill, somebody else might think of as being targeted, too aggressive. When I think that I'm helping, somebody else could think I'm micromanaging, right? So we all have that blind spot somewhere where we might mean something, but if we don't ever check, we don't know how it comes off. And it might be at odds with how we view ourselves.
So, if we want to be an effective leader, we have to get curious about how others are perceiving our leadership style.
We certainly would be well served to do so, yes. I mean, you go on LinkedIn and you read every day about people who struggle under leaders who don't wonder who don't have that curiosity. And you see a lot of pain out there.
So, I think the discrepancy here is we have this idea in society that the best leaders really don't care what other people think. And we've really glamorized the not caring what other people think. And the really
Mm.
interesting thing I'm hearing listening to what you have to say is that caring what others think about you can actually be really important. And I hadn't really thought of this before because I mean, I really want to kind of remove myself from the burden of worrying about what other people think. But you have to understand what other people think of you and want to serve them, want to provide them with a good feeling in order to kind of level yourself up. I listened to, I think it was Arthur C. Brooks talk the other day, or it was Professor Galloway talk about how there was a study done on the most popular kids in high school. And
Mhm.
the thing that decided who is the most popular, and obviously popularity is pretty subjective, but in this study, the thing that decided who was the most popular wasn't how cool you were, wasn't what grades you got, or if you were skipping class or going to parties, whatever. It was how many people you like. if
Mhm.
you, as a person, like more people are going to like you. And so I think what you're pointing out here is this idea that there are people that care so little what others think of them that they actually isolate themselves from them, that they actually have a negative impact on the other person because they don't even
Mm.
have the curiosity to think about how their actions affect them. And then when you approach them, they just say, "Well, no, I don't care what they think," as if as if it's a positive thing.
Mhm.
This is fascinating to me.
No, you bring up a great point, and I'm familiar with that study, and I think there's a duality. Like, I'm not saying everybody should care about every thought that everybody has. I mean, there is a line where you have to not care, particularly if you're a public figure. You know, 50% of the people like what you do and 50% of the people don't. 50% of the people want more, 50% of the people think it's too much. So you can't please everybody. And so I'm certainly not even suggesting that you should be on a mission to please everybody. It's not that. It's more what you addressed just now, which is caring enough about the people in your sphere to want to know, how do I impact them? How might I be of service to them better? And if you don't care, what does that say about your relationship? What does that say about narcissism,
Hmm.
right? Like, I can just show up and be anything and my impact means nothing, you know, on others. And so I do think to have servant leadership requires having the mindset of caring that at least the values that you have and how you want to be impacting people, at least caring enough to find out if that's what is actually happening.
Huh. So where is the balance, I guess? If you had to like concisely tell someone like this is how much you should be caring what other people think, how would you go about that?
Mm, it's a good question. I think it goes back to your values. I think getting clear on what your values are and what you want for the world, what you want for your impact on others. And then you're checking in to find out if you're aligned, if your behavior is aligned with what's important to you about how you impact people. Because self awareness is relational. Our
Hmm.
fulfillment is relational. Like, unless you're a hermit, you need the interaction with other people to have fulfillment. That, you know, I would say even having gratitude is not just about what you possess, but I think even gratitude is relational.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say your values and aligning
Mm,
your action with your values because you talk a lot about introspection and self-awareness and understanding your values and what you actually care about and having goals. All of that requires introspection. It
mhm.
requires self-awareness to be able to differentiate between what other people are putting onto you and what you truly want for yourself. Have you found there's an effective way, a most effective way to figure out what it is that you truly want and what your values actually are?
Mm. I don't think that there's one most effective way. I think that that is very personal. Um, some people might go for walks in nature and, be at peace with talking to God to get clarity on their values. And for some people, they might journal and get clarity that way. Some people will work with a coach, and it's the act of being asked deeper, powerful, important questions that bring them places that they couldn't think of on their own, that help identify their values. There's lots of ways to go about finding what your values are and where there's resonance for you with what you want for yourself and for the people around you. I think there's a lot of ways to go about that. Um, yeah. So sorry, I don't feel like I can give like, here's the
No.
secret answer.
No, that's often the honest answer. I think someone that says there is one secret answer to it all is not fully telling the truth. Um, but what I do find interesting is this idea of introspection as a skill.
Mm.
So, although everybody maybe should introspect differently to figure out what their values are, um, like in terms of where they're doing it, the setting they're doing it. From my understanding, researching for this podcast and just reading some books in the past, is that there is a skill aspect to it that applies to everybody. There's a certain way that you should phrase your questions, that maybe there's one way that works more objectively than others. How do you go about building introspection as a skill?
I think that the underlying skill for introspection goes back to curiosity. You
Mm,
know, like what's there? Why do you hold that belief? What's there and what's under that? And what's under that? And where does it come from? Whose voice is it? How did you come to that belief? What's important about that belief? You know, where does that belief take you? I think there's so many curiosity based questions that you can ask yourself to keep peeling that onion and keep uncovering layers of what's going on. So it starts with being curious with yourself. And I think that if you're not willing to be curious with yourself, if you're not willing to look deeply at where your beliefs come from and your certainty about things, it makes it very hard to be generous to others, to give grace to other people, to be curious about other people. I think those things become more difficult when you're not willing to look inside and be curious about the values, beliefs, um, and just sort of the inclinations that you hold. If you're not willing to wonder, well, where do they come from? And are they right? Are they the only? Is there more? What's possible? I think
yeah,
it makes it hard to open up to other people if you're not willing to do that with yourself.
interesting. So we have to, yeah, because you have to want to understand in order to then get to that awareness point.
And some people don't or don't yet.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
that's not our job to fix.
It's not our job to fix. I think that it's our job as people, as humans, to be open maybe to helping shine the light that there is more than just what somebody thinks. I think that asking questions that help them identify that there's something there they could think about if they wanted to, and maybe there would be purpose and meaning and fulfillment for them if they would be willing. That I think is important. And I think that if uh, the other side of that is if somebody is starting to become curious, I think we have a duty to hold up the mirror when people ask and to share honestly and to help them grow. And I think that if we as a society could be more um, uh, participatory in helping others grow when they're ready and wanting to, I think
Huh.
that's a beautiful gift.
Yes, yes, I love that. Once you see that someone is ready to grow, help them. Be Did you see that clip in the Boston Marathon of the guy that collapsed like maybe 100 feet before the finish line, and
I
he
didn't.
had run the entire way, and everyone's running past him, everyone's running past, and this one guy stops. He could have got his PR, who knows? He stops and he takes about 45 seconds to help this guy up off the ground,
I
and they
did see
walk
that.
to the end together. And it gave me chills. I almost started to cry because that is what we need more of in today's world. We need more of when you see that someone so badly wants to do something. They want to change, but they just don't, they might not be able, they might not know how right now. And you can be their helping hand.
Yes.
That is
And
such a
that's what I
fulfilling
think.
feeling.
I think there's a lot of people that genuinely want to, but they don't know how. And they don't know where to begin. How do you discover that? And then even if you discovered it, well, you can't just make SMART goals and fix it if you didn't know how to fix it. Like if you knew, you do it already. So I do think that there's a lot of people that would like more for themselves and they don't know where to begin.
Hmm.
And that's where I think helping people develop more self awareness, helping them develop the skills and behaviors that lead to the success that they want for themselves, if only they knew what was in their way. Who doesn't know a friend, a family member, a neighbor, whatever, who you go, oh, we know why that person's not getting a second date, or we know why, why they don't get called back. Generally, the people around you have a clue. It's the one person who doesn't know, and nobody says anything. And so
Huh.
I feel like if there were a way to safely, psychologically safely, anonymously be supportive and provide feedback so that the person could find out what is the thing that's in my way that I can't figure out on my own, what a gift that would be.
And that's why you built InnerVue.
And that's why I built Interview.
And I think it's so great. I am curious though, like with InnerVue, do you find that when people hear these things and they get anonymous feedback from the people around them
Mhm.
on maybe the reason they're not getting the second date, do you find that they're surprised or is there an innate knowing that they just weren't willing to
Mm.
face prior?
I see both. I see both. And you see that in sometimes, not always, in the alignment or gap between a person's self-reflections, because that's part of interview also is you do your own self-reflections. And so then you're able to see, where is my understanding of myself aligned with the experience other people have of me, and where is it not? And so there are times where people are self-critical and times where people are self-positive, where they view themselves a little bit higher than the people around them, or they hold themselves critically and see themselves as in a particular skill or set of skills as sort of functioning at a lower capacity than the way others see them. We call those hidden strengths. And what a gift that is too, to discover like, wow, I didn't think of myself as funny. This doesn't apply to me, but I didn't think of myself as funny, but they rated my humor so high. I kind of can stand a little taller and see myself in a different way, maybe have a little more confidence when I walk into that next room because I know something about myself that I didn't recognize before. So it isn't only about discovering our blind spots in the way of like, here's what we need to fix. Yeah, sure, there are things we could that, skills that we overuse or underuse, but sometimes it's just increasing our awareness that we're already hold skills in a way that is strong that could increase our confidence and help us you know, interact in a way that brings us to our next level of leadership, that sort of thing.
So, what do we do once we have this? You said in a recent article, you said, insight on its own is one of our finest illusions. There's nothing more secretly devastating and more useful to us than a life that feels like progress, yet never truly moves. I think that people can feel like their thinking and their awareness is progress in itself when there actually needs to be action on the back end to create the change toward the growth that they want to have in their lives. So, after people discover these things about themselves, what are then the next steps?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, what you said is right on. There are people who think, oh, it's all about discovery. And I recently wrote an article on this too, where you'll see people say, yeah, I'm working on that, or, oh, I know that's something I have to build. And it's almost like their claim that they know it is enough, that that's the demonstration of self-awareness because they know they're always late or bad, not great at time management, and that enough is alone, acknowledging it. And yet, if what we want for ourselves is to continually work toward our best version of ourselves for our own joy, our own happiness, for our own fulfillment, to reach our goals, then it is all about action. And so part of interview, once you go through the process and you get your dashboard of results, the next step is you go into the knowledge base where we have 1 minute videos on an array of skills and behaviors that have little steps, just like almost micro little actions that you can take to build up the skills that are important to you. Maybe you find out you're a frequent interrupter. What do you do about that? And this is the thing I find with so many assessments out there is that you get all this data, but you don't know what to do next. And so we give all that to you. Here are interactive worksheets that help reveal you to yourself, that help you discover what's in your way and then give you the explicit tools that you can work on that are not rocket science. They're just small shifts in behavior that can help you show up the way you want to show up that maybe you didn't realize you weren't. And so it helps align your intention with your impact. And these days there's so much out there. There's so many opportunities and ways that you can learn about actions you can take, but you have to find out what applies to you. Right now, every influencer gives lots of advice, do this, do this, do this, but that's general. And how do you know what applies to you without asking the people who know you?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been easier to fall into analysis paralysis. And I don't think that people have ever been more frustrated because Bob Proctor talks about the knowing doing gap, right? The
Mm,
difference between what we know and what we do causes frustration. So if we're constantly learning from someone that is a multimillionaire teaching us exactly how they built their business and got to this point, and we are I don't know, a broke cash register at a grocery store, something like that, and that's where we want to
mhm,
be. Our reality and what we know are so different, and that creates utmost frustration in our lives. But we have information coming from so many sources, and
mm,
none of it's truly personalized. And
mhm,
most of us haven't taken the time to figure out what is it that I do truly want? And so we end up just taking no action, which further increases frustration. I often talk about back when I was 12 years old, I played on 4 baseball teams when I was 12. And that meant that I had 4 different coaches, except I had 2 coaches on each team. So I had like 8 different coaches, all telling me a different thing that I should do with my swing.
mm.
And you know what I did? I
Dropped
didn't
out of
change
baseball?
anything. No, I didn't drop out, but I just didn't change my swing at all because
Mm,
I had so much information coming at me that I didn't know what was the right one to take.
mhm,
I think many people just need one set of
mm,
directions that they can adhere to then change their life.
mhm. Yeah. So I think, it's funny. I had thought of the idea of interview in 2007, long time ago, and
Wow.
just kind of backburnered it. But it seemed to me like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if you could find out, what is it that you don't know that gets in your own way? And I just thought that would, I knew back then of 360 assessments, but I knew that they were in, big companies, Fortune 500 companies used them a lot, middle managers and above. It was, leaders in these big organizations. But what about everybody else? Like, if that's so important and if it offers such good ROI for the Fortune 500 companies at their leadership levels, why wouldn't it be a benefit for regular people? And I kind of backburnered it until essentially now, because I think that part of what made the change for me, what made it seem like now is the right time, is the existence of AI. And this goes to your, too many voices. What are you going to do when you have so many voices? And so the thing about what I was able to create with Interview is that the AI could look for the patterns and let the outliers sort of fall by the wayside. So one disgruntled person in your life who really has a lot of their own issues and sees you so differently because of their own stuff doesn't
Mm.
hijack your report and make you go, oh, I have to go in this direction when everybody else is saying you got to go in that direction. So being able to look at the themes and the patterns, I think is more important than all the individual voices.
Yeah, it's what's the word for it's the macro analysis, right? It's what does it show as a whole of what are people agreeing on? Because we all do
Yeah.
bring our own personal things to our judgments of other people, which essentially
Yeah.
is kind of what this is.
Yep, right, right. And so we see that. We'll see that there's an outlier that, gives one person all kinds of, let's say, low ratings when the bulk of 10, 12, 15, whatever other people are kind of at the higher end. That's an indicator. This has something more to do with that individual person than it does about you. And so, looking at the patterns, looking at the trends, of the feedback that you're getting, both across the narratives and the qualitative data and the quantitative data, and being able to see the patterns in that. That's the nugget of wisdom. That's where you go, okay, this is how I'm showing up. Where do I like it? Where do I want to do more of it? And where do I want to do less of it? How do I course correct so that I'm on track with being the me that I want to be seen as?
Do you find that people that are providing information for others end up learning about themselves in the process?
I sure do. I really do. I think that just going and taking 10 minutes to fill out one of these assessments for somebody else, even for the people who go, I don't want to know, this isn't for me, that's okay. It's not for everyone. But those people still come away and very often are like, huh, and it gives them something to reflect on. There'll be some skill or some um, question, just sub question related to a skill that impacts them, that they feel something, that they know something is true, that they aren't how they'd like to be in that particular area. Maybe they're reading about um, encouragement and they know that they are not great at encouraging others, and it makes them realize, oh, this is important. I probably want to turn up the volume on that a little bit in my own life. The other thing is when they write their narrative responses to the 4 questions, after they write whatever they want to write and they click the AI refine button, it removes their voice so that it anonymizes their response, but it keeps the theme, it keeps the message that they want to convey. And they're able to read that right then in real time. And I really believe that it plants a little seed for however long it's there where they realize, oh, that is a nicer way to say that. That is kinder. That does land better. That, like I can communicate in a way that makes my message heard in a way that is not harmful or hurtful or
Interesting.
doesn't come out sounding, biased or too intense. And even if the next 2 people they speak to, they speak a little bit kinder because they saw that, that's a ripple effect for the world.
Yeah.
And I have such hope that that can continue, that people will say, how I show up matters.
Do you think in a way it encourages perfectionism? Because it, I want to reframe that question a little bit. I think that people obviously have tendencies to be better at one thing than another, right? It's just how we work. So some of
Yeah,
us are going to be more outgoing than
yeah.
others. Some of us are going to be better at diving deeper into conversation. Some of us are going to be more generous with our time, or we're going to be givers, right? Like the different love languages. Do you think that it's important to level out our personalities? Is that partially a goal of interview, or is it just recognizing that, okay, that is where I struggle, and maybe I didn't know that was something I struggled with?
Um, so I completely agree that we're not all going to be great at everything. I'm not a believer that everybody should be a straight A student. um, and kill themselves over the fact that, some subjects are harder than others. That's a conversation for another day. Um, I think it goes back to what's important to you. I don't think it's up to me or anybody else to tell you what should be important to you. I think it's for each individual to determine what is important to me about how I show up in the world. What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of impact do I want to have on the people around me? And then look at your data and say, what's important to me? What do I want to change or amplify or turn down in order to be the kind of person that I want to be in the world? And not everybody's going to think about that, but then not everybody's going to take an assessment. But for the people who do think about it, they have the information. There'll be many things that they'll say, I'm showing up the way I want to, and I'm good. I don't need to be constantly working on X or Y. But there might be a thing here or there that they go, I would like to show up a little better in that way. I would like to have maybe have people think of me as having a more positive outlook than maybe my results show. Or maybe I would like for people to think that I have a strong accountability, or that I'm, cool under pressure when I'm stressed or pressured or tired, that I'm hold my composure better. I would like to be seen that way. So now I know I'm not seen the way I thought I was or the way I see myself. And that matters to me. So that's the thing I'm going to tinker with and tune up, not become a perfectionist at all things.
Yeah, I think that's really important as a distinction. Because in my life, I know there are things that maybe people would say about me, and I'm like, okay, I hear you. That's not something I'm optimizing for right now. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's important because we can't be good at everything. That's an
And it goes
unrealistic
back,
expectation.
right. And it goes back to we can't be all things to all people. Half the people are going to say you don't do this enough, and half the people are going to say you do it too much. You can't be all
Mm,
things to all people. And that's where you need to be in sync with what's important to you. What are your values? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for the world? What do you want to put out there? How do you want to impact others? And it doesn't have to align with everybody else's wish of what you would or could be.
So I know that a lot of high achievers tend to show up differently in different situations. They tend
Mm,
to maybe be a different son than they are a brother, than they are a business person, right?
mm,
Do you find that uh, and I have no idea about this. This is a complete like curious question. Is there any correlation between continuity of identity and happiness and fulfillment?
mm. That's a great question. When everybody's watching this podcast, if somebody has a great answer, I'd love to see it. Put a comment below.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't have a hard answer for you, but here's what I'd say. I do think that um, we are one person. We're not. I get what you're saying that we might put on a different version of ourselves, or we might amplify some of our traits or skills in one setting than we do in another, but we can't
Yeah.
fake what we don't have, right? So we still are one person under it all, and we show what we want in different settings. But we're still one person with the capacity that we have and the different skill sets that we have. Um, and I think that under it all, um, there's probably a person that we want to be, and we don't always step into those shoes.
Mm,
So when we're a, really good son, and a really good teammate, but a crappy brother, there's something in there, like, how to be better. You're not opting to be better in that relationship. And that's where I go back to everything is relational. Like, how you show up is relational. And so who do you want to be in the world? Do you want to be that way that you show up with the brother? Because that's still you. It's still a reflection of you. And is
mm,
that the self you want to be, or is there some like layers of heavy, wet blankets on you that you could be a happier, more fulfilled person if you could work through that, discover what's there and work and come out of it? It's not because in that relationship you're a different person.
yeah, that makes sense. The other thing I'm thinking about with that is um, self-criticism. Because I think when we learn more about ourselves and we maybe learn things that we didn't think about ourselves, it can be pretty easy for our first instinct to be criticism toward ourselves. So, what is the
Mm,
difference between self-criticism and self-awareness?
mm. Yeah, I think that so criticism, I'm hearing in this context almost like as a verb. Um,
Yeah.
and you can have self awareness and not even like some things that you learn without needing to punish yourself for it. You can have the curiosity, you can discover that your how you're showing up is not what you like, but you don't have to beat yourself up over it. It's the difference almost of like choosing to stay stuck or choosing to look forward. And looking forward doesn't bring criticism with it. Looking forward is what's possible for me. How can I, if that's not how I want to be, what's possible? How can I be different? And how do I get there? And
Yeah.
so self criticism to me almost feels like a commitment to being stuck.
Hmm. That's interesting. So, when we criticize ourselves in that way as a verb, we are, I guess, keeping ourselves in the past. We're aligning our current identity with who we've been previously, which then keeps us in that cycle. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's well said. I think it doesn't contribute to moving towards the you want to become.
Yeah. So, Allison, we've covered a lot today. I'm curious, what question have I not asked that you think would be the most valuable?
Mm. I really should have come prepared with an answer for that one.
That's
Um,
okay.
well, the most valuable, gosh, that's so subjective. I don't know that I could come up with the most valuable, but what maybe I thought you would ask me is like something about um, gratitude and ambition.
Yeah.
I was ready for that.
Yeah.
um, but you know what? And just kind of on that detour of gratitude, what I will say is I really appreciate that the things you have asked me really gave me the opportunity to talk about interview, to talk about my passion for it, to talk about why I think it's important for people and how the idea of spreading self-awareness is like a gift to one another and a gift to society. Because if we could all focus on how do we impact the person next to us a little bit better, a little bit kinder, a little bit more generous, a little bit more graceful, wow, what a difference we could make in our day-to-day lives, in traffic and at the office and at, the market and everywhere that we go where there's just everybody's in their own space. And if we could just tune up the self-awareness a little bit more, that what brings with that is other awareness. And I think that bringing those two together, that self-awareness and other awareness, would really make a big difference, just in sort of how people are experiencing life these days in 2026 in a
Hmm.
positive way.
Yeah. I mean, know thyself is one of the oldest adages in the world. And I think it's so important to have awareness is the first step to change, whether positive or negative.
Yeah. And if you're not willing to have self awareness, you've pretty much put the walls up to having more other awareness as well. And then, that's where
Mm,
we could go
yes.
on with, loneliness or addiction issues or all kinds of things that come from disconnect.
Yeah. On the topic of gratitude and ambition, because I try to mention it in every podcast. I don't find that it always shows up explicitly. I think that it always shows up as a theme of what we're talking about underlying
Mm,
everything through the lens that we're seeing it, right? I'm a big proponent that life is really just the lens that we see it through. And you said earlier that you can have people in the same room that experience the same board meeting that saw it completely differently. And what's the reason
mm,
for that? It's the lens that they're seeing life through,
mm.
right? And
Yes.
that is why gratitude is so important to me. And I think that if you're looking at yourself and your awareness of yourself through a lens of gratitude,
Mm,
that is so enormously important. I've really come to discover that gratitude is more than the house that we live in or the car that we have parked in the driveway. Even more than, although it's so important, it's even more than the people in our lives. Gratitude is so much about who you are for and what you've
mhm,
done to create this life for yourself, because ultimately our actions are responsible for the reality that we're living in. And if we like our
mhm,
life even at all right now, we have to be grateful to ourselves for the decisions that we've made to bring us here. And I think awareness of that leads to living life through a more positive lens.
mm. Yes, I think gratitude gives ambition both direction and meaning. Like if you're just
Mm,
ambitious without gratitude, it's empty. Constant
yeah,
ambition, right? Because then you're never satisfied, you're never fulfilled, you're
no.
always waiting to be somewhere else. So it's important that that aspect of gratitude is so important to give ambition direction and meaning. And yeah, I mean, I think appreciating what you have and being called to become more. because you're
Yeah.
here on earth for a reason and your impact on others matters. I think staying aware of your degree of gratitude helps you show up a better version of yourself.
100%. I love that so much. And if you're grateful and you're not ambitious, then a lot of times that's complacency. It's saying this is just
Yes,
good enough.
it
And
lacks
I think
momentum.
exactly. And the most
Yeah.
fulfilling gratitude is a dynamic one where we're constantly working for more as well, but not out of a need for it, out of a want for it.
And like you said, it isn't about the material things. It's not about the house or the car or the vacations. It's really about the being. And I think, what's so much more important, when you get to the end of your life and you're sitting there and you're reflecting, you're not saying, well, thank God I had that Ferrari, like you're thanking God for the people that mattered in your life. That's
Right.
gratitude. Yeah.
100%. Allison, I've absolutely loved this conversation. I've loved just the few months since we've connected and seeing your comments on my LinkedIn and getting to see your posts and your energy for everybody listening. It's just magnetic. I love it so much. I love what you're building. I think it's really, really important. Um,
Thank you.
as we said when like I initially for everybody listening and watching, Allison and I had a call because she wanted to do a podcast together, and I am right now being very, very selective on the guests that I let on my show. And Allison's energy and her mission just were so clear to me. I thought it's so important that everybody here gets to hear it and be a part of it. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I
Yeah.
appreciate your time. I appreciate your perspective. And I really enjoy your LinkedIn posts as well.
Thank you. Let's leave everybody with just one piece of action that they can take today to help combat that, gap that's causing so much frustration in their lives. What's one thing that people can do to start to create a more wonderful reality for themselves?
Yeah. Wake up every day and think about what is the impact I want to have on the people around me today. Just that. Just start there.
Yeah. So simple and just that's the most powerful thing you can do. Lead from service. Lead from service.
Have
Amazing.
intention. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm so grateful to have had Allison on the show today and so grateful that you showed up to listen to better your life. This has been the Grateful Podcast. See you next week.